So you're all very welcome along to yet another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hurley, and we're going to discuss the football in this episode. If you missed the hurling, check the last episode of the podcast to check out that for league semi-final action. This weekend, it's the final weekend of the group stages in the Allianz Football League. Huge action, especially Division 1 and Division 4 as well. Division 2 and Division 3 nearly all wrapped up, but we will go through some of them games in detail as well. And I'm delighted to be joined once again by Aaron Prendergast from Gaelic Fan TV to discuss the action. So, Aaron, it's been an interesting few weeks in the Allianz Football League. Division 1 still in the melting pot, but Division 2 maybe a bit surprising that there's only one game really that has any relevance this weekend.
Yeah, and I think when you would have seen the fixture list at the start of the season, I think most people would have envisaged that last game between Dublin and Louth to be about as much as a dead rubber as anything. No one's going to go to that game in Croke Park. Like, Dublin will probably have promotion already wrapped up. Louth will, might be scrapping to stay up, but ultimately the interest levels are not going to be there. And incredibly, it's the complete opposite. That's where most eyes are probably going to be at this weekend, is watching that game. I think Galway Kerry as well, and obviously, unfortunately, we don't have Leitrim Sligo or Fermanagh Cavan on TV. They're two other big promotion games, which is obviously disappointing. But yeah, there's some very, Armagh Tyrone as well. That's a huge rivalry, and there's a big backstory going into that game with, obviously what happened between them two last year, and the fact that Tyrone could, relegate Armagh, which, considering, Armagh were the ones who ended Tyrone's reign as All-Ireland champions in the qualifiers last year. I think, revenge is sweet. And obviously Galway Kerry, the All-Ireland finalists last year, winner could go to a league final, depending on, certain scenarios and everything else. Obviously a win for Galway definitely does guarantee them that. So yeah, I'm very, very, very much excited for this weekend's games, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Definitely so, yeah. And you mentioned Galway Kerry. That's the game we're going to start on. TG Carr 145 on Sunday. And all the games in Division 1 are 145, by the way, if in case your listeners are wondering. Yeah, Galway, good win against Armagh last week. Probably the most boring game you could ever watch. Thank God the rugby was at the same time, because I definitely flicked over the channel. But for Kerry, decent win against Roscommon, albeit they were very lucky to avoid a penalty at the end against Roscommon. So, but the thing is, Kerry have had a poor league by many people's standards, but still, if they win this game, they could get into a league final against Mayo and Croke Park.
They could do, yeah. And then once they get into Croke Park, considering what Kerry done to Mayo in the two games they played against them in Croke Park last year in the league final and in the All-Ireland quarterfinals as well, a lot of people nearly sort of tip towards Kerry being the favourites. And it's an interesting one with Kerry. Even in a lot of their wins, they haven't been at their best. Against Armagh, their shooting was very, very poor that day. And it was probably Armagh being so defensive that actually probably dragged Kerry out of trouble. Armagh just kept inviting Kerry onto them. Whereas you've seen when teams have actually gone after Kerry, the likes of Tyrone in the second half, Mayo obviously early on in the first half. When you get after this Kerry side, they've been vulnerable this year. Defensively, they definitely haven't been as strong. Conceded 3 goals against Mayo, conceded 2 goals against Tyrone. There's been defensive problems there definitely this year, which were certainly not evident last year. Obviously with Kerry though, we know that there hasn't been an immediate rush with bringing back David Clifford, Paddy Clifford. They haven't been going full throttle because of the risk of injuries and because of the fact they're obviously looking ahead towards the All-Ireland. And obviously they're still waiting for the likes of Paul Ganey and Stephen O'Brien to come back as well. So yeah, I don't think Kerry have been flying just yet, but at the same time they've won 3 games all at home. And away from home, there has been a few difficult games there. They should have beat Donegal on the opening week. I think we can all agree with that. But you look at it, away to Mayo, tough place to go, and away to Tyrone, tough place to go. 2 very tough grounds to go to, and obviously now going away to Galway, it's another tough place to go. And you'd imagine Galway would be bang up for this, considering what happened in the All-Ireland final last year.
And that's an interesting aspect. The All-Ireland final, they've obviously played each other in that, and Galway have missed Shane Walsh and Damien Comer, but yet again, despite them missing Robert Finnerty's another one throughout really the league campaign, they're on the verge of a league final. The permutations for Galway could be any simpler. If they don't lose the game, they're in the league final. So Do you think Galway will play kind of a defensive system, because they have done so far? They've been statistically, along with Armagh and Donegal, I think, one of the most boring teams in Division 1. So do you think Galway will stick to their principles and play a defensive game, knowing what to stick?
Yeah, I think they probably will. Like when you actually look at them statistically, like they've conceded the least in Division 1, but they've actually, in terms of scoring, they've actually scored the second least. Like only Donegal have actually scored less than them in Division 1 this year. So it's been a strange one with Galway. Like they haven't been firing on all cylinders in terms of attack. And there's probably been reason for that. I mean, obviously Damien Comer's injury, Shane Walsh, been a while since we've seen him come back in, and he's kind of slowly getting back into the swing of things. Tom O'Callaghan's been injured. Matthew Tierney's been the man who's really had to sort of carry this Galway side. So yeah, I think for Galway, it definitely has been a lot more defensive. I think that has been the criticism of Galway last year in particular. You think of how they imploded against Armagh. Derry were super defensive in the semi-finals and didn't cause Galway too many problems. And they didn't concede any goals in the final, but they could still concede 22 points. So yeah, I think there has been a lot more emphasis on Galway this year to be a bit more defensive, to be a bit tougher to break down, and be a bit more patient on the ball, and be a bit more of a seasoned team. So yeah, you would expect them to be similar, but I think at the same time, Kerry's biggest vulnerabilities this year have been when teams have gone after them. Like Tyrone went after them in the second half, Mayo went after them. If you get in their faces and you make an occasion out of it, the fans get up for it. You can start fast and sort of knock the stuffing out of this Kerry side. Whereas we seen when Armagh played Kerry, they were sitting back, and they just kept inviting. Like if you leave these Kerry players time on the ball, like David Clifford, like they'll make things happen. Like these are brilliant footballers, some of the best in the country. You're even going further back a field to the likes of Tom O'Sullivan and these guys who can get forward and score from distance. So I think from a Galway perspective, yes, they should be a little defensive, but I think at the same time, for the opening 20 minutes, they should really get after Kerry, because that's been when they've been most vulnerable this year.
Yeah, fair point. And again with Kerry, you mentioned all the attacking talent they have, but I'll put this argument to you, because a lot of people have said this, including people on social media and things. Are Kerry too reliant on David Clifford and Sean O'Shea? Because I heard this so many times on social media. When you look at the scoring stats so far, Clifford has scored 112, O'Shea 1-7. But when you look at the rest of the team, like Darragh Roach, Donald O'Sullivan are up there, but they don't seem to do it on a consistent basis. I know Paul Gainey's back into the team, which could be a huge boost to Kerry. But do you think they're kind of a two-man team, this Kerry side? And will they win the All-Ireland eventually playing like this?
Yeah, like it's certainly looked that way in the league so far this year. And there's been a lot of underperforming players, I think, in the background. Like Killian Spillane hasn't, both Spillanes have been fairly quiet this year. Killian Spillane and Adrian Spillane, they haven't really done much for Kerry this year, which has been disappointing, because they've been two players who, in the business end of the championship in the last couple of seasons have made a difference. And Killian Spillane seems to be a player who, maybe a bit like Kevin McManaman, he's a great player to bring off the bench, but when you start him, sometimes he doesn't quite have that same impact. And even some of the other players like Tony Brosnan has looked okay in parts, but probably hasn't kicked on as much. So I think when they get Stephen O'Brien back, when Paul Gainey is fully fit again and starting regularly, I think they won't be as reliant on them. But I think at the same time, you take the two of these out of Kerry, of course, like they wouldn't win the All Ireland in my opinion. But again, I think you can say similar to Dublin. You take Con O'Callaghan and Kieran Kilkenny out of Dublin, like they're miles off it, like miles and miles off it. Mayo have got an extremely good squad at the minute. You could take Aidan O'Shea and Ryan O'Donoghue out. The levels would drop. There would be a drop off there. The worrying part for Kerry is that the players in the background, like the other than Darragh Roach and maybe Donald O'Sullivan, they aren't performing consistently, and that is a worry, because if they do get an injury, in the business end of the championship, and these players haven't been performing, you're then looking at them and thinking, right, you now need to perform. So yeah, there is a bit of jeopardation there, and I think maybe the standards of a lot of the Kerry players haven't been the same this year as to what it was last year. And whether that's got to do with them winning the All-Ireland and getting the monkey off the back, I don't know. But there has been enough. We've watched this sport enough times to know that when teams do win the All-Ireland, there does tend to be a drop the next year. Like Tyrone were a perfect example. You think of Cork, even your own county in 2011 when they'd won the All-Ireland in 2010. Dublin when they won it in 2011 and 2012. Like there's clear evidence to suggest that when teams do sort of get the monkey off their back, the next year seems to be a drop. And it does look like that for Kerry so far, and whether it will transform into the championship, that remains to be seen. But so far, there's definitely been a lot not quite right for Kerry this year.
Yeah, absolutely so. And I suppose, what's your prediction for this game? Do you think Galway will get the victory at home and see that final place, or will Kerry challenge them? And let's not forget, like if Kerry win this game, there's still a chance that they won't make the league final, depending on the Tyrone and Roscommon results. We'll get down to them games in the minute. But do you think Galway will see the deal without any help?
Yeah, I think they'll come through it. I think by 1 or 2 points. I think they're a bit further ahead. They're in a good run of form now. Kerry haven't won an away game this year. I'm sure they'll want to put that right. But I think at the same time, there's no great devastation if Kerry lose. They're not going to get relegated. So all is kind of okay there. So yeah, I fancy Galway.
Yeah, I'd probably fancy Galway as well, maybe by a point, maybe two. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think Kerry, like their away form's pretty poor, and they'll focus full on onto the championship. Like Jack O'Connor has recently said, he doesn't really care too much about the league, and I think that'll show definitely on Sunday. The next game I'm going to talk, I was going to leave this game to the very last until breaking events today. Roscommon against Donegal, obviously 145. I think it's on pop-up view on TG Carr. I'm not entirely sure about that now, but I think it is anyway. But the main story isn't the game in general. It is Paddy Carr has resigned as Donegal manager. He resigned on Wednesday. This podcast is going out on Thursday. So yesterday he resigned as Donegal manager. So yeah, Aaron, it's a big decision. I mentioned Donegal as one of the worst teams in Division 1 last Sunday, maybe infamously so, but it seems like my intentions were kind of correct. The players probably don't believe in him. That's what the reports were saying anyway. So, yeah, what's your general thoughts on this? It's a big call.
Yeah, I suppose it's sad in some respects. Like a manager that's only been in charge, he's only been in charge of 6 league games, and he steps down. And yeah, obviously when you seen Ray Dempsey step down of Limerick, you were looking at it again, and you were looking at it from a Limerick perspective and thinking, what were they actually expecting to happen? And from a Donegal perspective, when you have Michael Murphy retire, when you have Paddy McBurty get injured, you were looking at it and thinking, okay, relegation is likely. I think a lot of people probably I think I predicted Donegal to get relegated even before McBurty's injury. But I think one thing is clear with Donegal, like they do have good players. They definitely do have good footballers, like Michael Langan, Kieran Thompson, Oisin Gallen, these lads. They have, Shane O'Donnell, Niall O'Donnell. They have good footballers, and they should be performing better than what they have been performed. Like the fact that London and Waterford are the only 2 counties that have scored less than Donegal across all 4 divisions. Like that's, that looks pretty grim viewing from a Donegal perspective. And they haven't shot the lights out at all. And the fact you're getting beat by 11 points by Mayo in the end, like that's in a game where you need to win. You score 3 points in the second half. So yeah, look, I think the fact that Paddy Carr has resigned maybe suggests that was there pressure maybe from the county board to say, we'll either get rid of you or you can do it your own way, and we'll spare you the embarrassment. But it's clear that players had bought in. I mean, Carl Lacey obviously stepped away from management a couple of weeks ago, stepped away and everything else. And that was probably enough writing on the wall, to be honest with you. Jim McGuinness coming out saying what he was saying about the fact that the Donegal County Board didn't want him. So yeah, I think at the start of the year when you were looking at all the rumours about people not being happy in Donegal, you were thinking it's just one of them things that you get sometimes. But sometimes with rumours, there's substance to it, and I think there has been substance to this. And I think in the end, it probably is the right decision, I think, for all parties. It's unfortunate for Paddy Carr, like he's a Dublin man, and obviously, he won an All-Ireland with Kilmacud Crokes. Like it was great to see him get his opportunity. Did it come too late in his managerial career? Probably. And it probably also was a very tough job as well. And he has had a lot of things go against him, I think. But I think all in all, yeah, I think it is the right decision.
Yeah, it's tough for a guy to lose his job, definitely. But it kind of looks that way on the pitch on Sunday. Like the players didn't care really. I know it's harsh, but there was no urgency with Donegal on Sunday, and that's probably why Paddy Carr ended up resigning. But for this particular game, you'd have to back Roscommon considering what's happened in recent days.
Yeah, I think so. Like you might get a bounce out of Donegal. As you said, obviously we're recording this on Wednesday night, and it's unclear as to who's going to be in charge. Rumors that maybe Carl Lacey might come in. Some people are talking Jim McGuinness is going to make a return. Michael Murphy might come in for the end of the season. Yeah, there's a lot of rumors flying in there. You would expect a bounce. Could it be too early for a bounce? Like, a new manager coming in, does he have enough time, like from now to Monday or to the game? I'm not sure. Roscommon, yeah, I think at home, obviously with Roscommon not having lost the last 3 games, I think they'll want to end the league on a high. They won't want to end the league with 4 straight defeats because then they're going into that Mayo game in a bit of a bad run of form. So yeah, I'd go for Roscommon to win. I think they are the better side than Donegal so far. Defensively, they've been fairly sound. What you would say is though, Roscommon aren't, like when you look at what they're finishing with a lot of the time, they're finishing with 13, 14, sometimes 12 points a game. Like they finish with 9 points against Galway. They haven't been free flowing in terms of attack, and that might allow Donegal to have a sniff. And that's why I don't think it will be comfortable, like hugely comfortable for Roscommon. I think it'll be 2 or 3 points, but I think Donegal will push Roscommon. And I think the fact that even Paddy Carr has left, there probably will be a bit more of a push from Donegal. But I still fancy Roscommon to get the victory.
Yeah, I said it all week, and I think Roscommon will win this game as well. And obviously, we're predicting Galway to beat Kerry, so it won't be enough for promotion in the end. But Roscommon have had an outstanding league, and like depending on results, they could finish third. So who would have thought that started the league? 3 Connacht teams in the top 3, incredible record. And well done for Roscommon in the league campaign, and for Donegal, it's going to be a long, long season for them. In a bad way, by the way. The next game is Tyrone against Armagh. BBC iPlayer 145 again. Like, this is a crucial game. Like, Tyrone have an outside chance of a league final, maybe an outside chance of relegation as well. Armagh, it's a much bigger game for them. Like, they're on 5 points, Monaghan on 4. If Armagh lose this game, we'll get onto Monaghan and Mayo in the minute, but this is a big, big game for Armagh.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a massive, massive game for Armagh. I mean, it's hard to know like what's happened with Armagh. Like I suppose we were speaking about it on my show on Sunday night, and you're looking at it and thinking, after the progress that was made with Armagh last season, and the fact that they were very close to reaching an All-Ireland final, and yeah, like the last year they went after teams in the league. They got in Dublin's face and beat them. They got in Tyrone's face and beat them, and it felt like finally this Armagh side that has so much talent in Rian O'Neill, one of the best footballers, one of the best forwards in the country, one of the best kickers of the ball in the game, you'd have to say. And then, you sprinkle in some other very talented players like Stephen Campbell, Rory Grugan, Kieran Mackin in around midfield, Charlie O'Burns at wing back, like Ethan Rafferty, who, it seems to be doing more from play, like scoring more. It's kind of baffling, really, scoring more than some of the other Armagh players as a goalkeeper. But he's been brilliant as well, like in terms of his kickouts. And although he can make some questionable decisions at times at the wrong moments and probably tries to get involved a bit too much, he has been impressive, and yeah, I don't know what's happened with Armagh. Like they've just been too defensive this year. Whether they're thinking too far ahead to Ulster, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right with Armagh. They're not scoring, they're not creating enough. They seem very cautious in their approach, and it would just be a massive setback to get relegated because like they were the team that it's very hard for teams to come up from Division 1 that haven't been there in a while and solidify themselves. We see this all the time. Once you solidify yourselves, you get a couple of seasons under your belt, you can build, and that helps sort of with progress and player development and everything else. And to go back to Division 2 will be a huge, huge setback. But yeah, it just hasn't looked right for Armagh. And I think Tyrone, as we said, with the fact that, with everything that happened with Tyrone and Armagh last year, they'll be bang up for it. They'll be bang up for it. And what an opportunity to relegate your big rivals and maybe keep ourselves alive, you know, in the chance of a league final, and, you know, finish the season on 8 points, which a couple of weeks ago we would not have predicted from a Tyrone perspective.
I think about it, yeah, they were on 2 points and they had 3 games to go. And who would have thought, like, if they beat Armagh this Sunday, which I think they will as well, who would have thought 6 points out of 6 for Tyrone? It's a miraculous achievement, in fairness, especially the amount of stick that Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan were getting over the last few weeks.
Yeah, it is like, and it's a strange one with Tyrone. Like they seem to be a team that when you back them into a corner and you really write them off, they always thrive on it. It's always been the thing with Tyrone. That's always been their sort of little thing. Like it's when the nation they sort of use this siege mentality. Everyone's against us, and they build off it. You seen it when they won the All Ireland. You know, everyone was writing them off going in against Kerry after the whole COVID situation. Then they beat them, and then, you know, all the focus was on Mayo going into the final because Mayo had beaten Dublin, and this is finally Mayo's year. And then Tyrone won it. And even last year, when they like their final 2 league games were against Mayo and Kerry, everyone wrote them off, including me. We all thought they're gone. You know, there's no way they can stay up. And then they won the 2 games. But when everyone's praising them and sort of, you know, talking them up, they then let you down. So it's been a strange one with them. And that's why you can't, it's hard to predict them at times because you don't know which kind of Tyrone is going to show up. But they have the talent. McCurry's been brilliant. Derek Canavan's been impressive. Matty Donnelly's been good as well. You know, Richie Donnelly at times, you know, making an impact as well. So yeah, like I've been impressed with Tyrone the last 2 games. Like the word on the street from a lot of people, I've seen the highlights and everything else against Monaghan, is that, you know, decisions maybe went their way and that they actually didn't play too well against Monaghan, but they got the win, and that was the main thing. And I just think with this kind of game, with what's on the line, surely they'll be up for it, and that's why I fancy them to get the win.
Yeah, I fancy them to get the win as well. And yeah, it means Armagh will be absolutely sweating over the next game we're going to discuss, in the last game in Division 1. Mayo against Monaghan in McHale Park at 1:45. And on TG Carr, a pop-up view, I think it is, as well as Roscommon and Donegal. So we're predicting Armagh to lose. So for Armagh to go down, Monaghan have to beat Mayo because of Monaghan's worse head-to-head record than Armagh this season. So can Monaghan do it? Can they pull off another Houdini act?
I think they can. I think they can, and I think it's the fact that they're playing Mayo, who I know Mayo have got a very, very good squad. Like, make no mistake about it. You know, they can rotate a lot of players here and probably still have the ability to beat Monaghan. But the thing is, like, Mayo, so they already have a league final wrapped up. So they're playing this weekend. They're then playing next weekend in the league final. And then I think it's actually the weekend after that they play Roscommon in the championship. So, like, Mayo have very little rest time, and then they beat Roscommon. Before you know it, then, you know, it's in against Galway, and then it's a kind of final possibly. So the games are coming thick and fast for Mayo, and there's not going to be much time for rest and recuperation and everything else. So I just get the feeling that Mayo will treat this game as a challenge match. It's probably not fair for the other sides in the relegation zone in some ways, because, you know, Mayo have taken points off other teams. And I just think Monaghan, like, this is their bread and butter. Like, this is what they turn up to do. Like, this is what they do. They've been here so many times. I know it's away from home, and a lot of the time it's been at, you know, Clonus, where they beat Dublin, they beat Galway in the last sort of final day relegation games in the last couple of years. But yeah, I fancy them. I fancy Monaghan. I think, you know, I don't think they were terrible against Tyrone. I thought they played well enough. Just a few decisions went against them. And, you know, I think they have shown progress under Vinnie Corey. They definitely have. Micheál Bannigan's been very good. You know, Jack McCarron has been excellent at times. Conor McManus is still contributing to this Monaghan side even after all these years. So yeah, I fancy them. Like, it will be interesting with Mayo. Like, if Mayo turn up and play at their best, of course, I think Mayo will win. But I just think Mayo, there'll be a lot of rotation, and you'll probably see some faces in the Mayo side that we've honestly never heard of. To be honest with you, I think there's going to be a good bit of rotation here, and that's why I fancy Monaghan.
Yeah, like, it's going to be a very interesting game, all right? Like, I said it on your channel, I think Mayo would win if they played their first team, but you make a very valid point there why Mayo would rest players. Like, hearing Kevin McStay against Donegal, he wanted to win this game on Sunday. I'm not sure, could you take press conference interviews as likely, really? But yeah, I'd go for why not? I'll go for Monaghan as well to win this game. I think Mayo definitely, they have a league final next week, and to win a trophy would be brilliant for Mayo to win in Croke Park as well. So yeah, why not? I'd fancy Monaghan to win it. So yeah, according to our predictions, it'll be Armagh, Donegal relegated. Donegal, we both agree that they deserve it. Do you think Armagh deserve to go down?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think when you look at it on the balance of play, like finishing with 5 points, I think 6 points has been the benchmark now for the last couple of years that you need at least that. Sometimes you might even still go down with that, but I think that's the minimum requirement. And yeah, like they've just lacked any, like, I haven't watched Armagh once this year and been hugely impressed. I was impressed with how they defended against Kerry, but at the same time, that wasn't the game to play like that again. I can understand operating like that against Kerry in an All Ireland semi final or an All Ireland quarter final or whatever, or a final. But I think with the fact that Kerry were vulnerable coming into that game, they were vulnerable. Like, you just get after them, get after them and sort of put the nail in the coffin. And they didn't do that. So yeah, yeah, I think it's, I think the teams that get relegated usually, probably Kildare didn't maybe deserve to get relegated last year, but I think there can be no arguments this time around.
And just a quick word before we go on to Division 2, our predictions suggest that Galway and Mayo will be in the final. An exciting fight to look forward to if it plans out their way in Croke Park. Who do you think will win that Connacht derby?
Yeah, there's two teams that are obviously very familiar with each other. Probably going to play each other maybe in a Connacht semi-final, depending on how Mayo Roscommon goes. A very hard one because it's in some ways it's a clash of styles. In some ways, it's Mayo's organised chaos, their intensity. They've been getting after teams, getting in the faces of teams. Whereas Galway's almost been the opposite. It's been very cautious, very defensive, calm, measured, waiting for the right moments to attack. So it'd be a very fascinating game because it's probably on the basis of what we've seen in the league, two completely different styles. And you'd imagine a scenario where Galway will just try hit Mayo on the counter attack and absorb the pressure. And yeah, it'll be a close game. You'd fancy Mayo at this moment in time, but Galway are probably, Galway have won a good couple of big games in the last couple of years that Mayo probably haven't since 2021. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but yeah, I'd go for Mayo.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and obviously we'll discuss that in the podcast next week once we know our definitive finalist on the GA Statsman podcast. We'll move on to Division 2, and the big game, without a doubt, in Division 2 is your own county, Aaron. Dublin against Louth, 2 p.m. on the TG Car app or player. I'm not sure what to call it anymore, but this is a big game now, and who would have thought this about Louth, a team that have not been shown on RT for 6 match days, are in a promotion charge. And yeah, Louth fans have been very angry about that, not so much about their team, but about RT in the last few days. And to ram the point even home, more Joannne Cantwell's comments in the last few weeks saying Ardee St. Mary's isn't TV worthy. So yeah, that was all drama last weekend, but this is a huge game. Like, Louth, they have a decent chance to, like, Dublin are obviously playing well after that win against Meath, but Louth still have a chance.
They definitely do have a chance. Like, I mean, yeah, as you said, Dublin were excellent against Meath, and Meath probably played into their hands the way Meath played. Louth won't be as naive. Like, Louth won't just kick long, into the Dublin's full back line. They'll keep the ball. They'll be patient. They'll be very defensive. And being as defensive in Croke Park, that will be the interesting one, actually. And that is an interesting point to make, because when teams have gone very defensive against Dublin, it's never worked, to be honest. It actually suits Dublin when teams play that way, because that's what Dublin have been set up to break down so many times. Like that, that was the whole thing when you played Dublin. That's what every team tried to do, and every team was just trying to keep the score down. And Leinster, like, and you get all men behind the ball, and like, evidence now suggests, and I think you even see it in the Dublin Derry game, where Derry were very defensive in the first half, offered very little in attack, and Dublin just picked them apart. So that would be the thing for Louth, is that we know they are quite defensive. Now, it's been very, very good so far, and you shouldn't change a plan that works. But that would be the worry, is that if they, like in Croke Park as well, a ground that they're not, I know they played in the Division 3 final last year, but they're not too familiar playing there. And they I can't remember the last time they played Dublin in Croke Park. It's been probably 2010 in the qualifiers, maybe, off the top of my head. So, like, a lot of those players none of those players have played against Dublin and Croke Park. So that would be a worry, is that they beat defensive and Dublin just picked them apart. But look, if they can stay in the game, if they can get through the first half and they're only 2-3 points down, the longer the game goes on, the more confident they'll get. I think Sam Mulroy is going to be injured for this game from what I've heard, so that's a big loss. But look, Dublin just haven't we haven't been great this year. Like at times, like we didn't put the nail. Like Clare, went after us and caused us problems. So look, I think Louth have a chance. Louth do have a chance, but I think from a Dublin perspective, it would be an embarrassment if we lost this game, even though Louth have made progress. So I think Dublin surely will come through.
No, they played absolutely brilliant in the C campaign and definitely deserve credit, but yeah, I would have to agree that Dublin will it. And I suppose before we leave this game, what do you think of Joannne Cantwell's comments the other night? A lot of talk on social media about it. It was kind of just a moment where, like, did she actually just say that about Ardee St. Mary's pitch when Ardee was actually televised the next game after that with Fermanagh? Like, it was kind of a bizarre comment to make.
Yeah, it was like I wasn't watching the Sunday game live. Obviously, you were on my show, and we were doing the podcast on my show. If people want to check that out, but yeah, like I couldn't believe those comments, and you nearly had to go back and watch it to actually see that she actually did say that. Yeah, it was bizarre, really. Like just crazy stuff. Like I think, like if like it's just weird that they've done that. Like I feel like what's happened is they just didn't have enough time to show them. I think that's honestly, I think what actually happened. They didn't have enough time to show them. They didn't plan to show them. They probably didn't expect Louth to get the victory and still be in the promotion battle. They probably expected Cork to win the game, and it wouldn't have mattered because obviously the head to head with Derry obviously being further ahead and everything else. 4 points ahead, so it wouldn't have mattered. So I don't think they envisaged having Louth, like they didn't plan putting them in their show. And I think probably what's happened is they've just decided, well, you know what, we're not going to take the blame. Let's put the blame back on Louth GA, because why not? We'll just do that instead. And yeah, it's just a very sour taste. Like the fact that fair play to Peter Fitzpatrick, the Louth GA chairman, like putting out on Twitter, leaving a link as well to the highlights on Louth GA's YouTube channel. They were on the TG Carr show as well. So RT have a lot to answer for, and it just, yeah, like unfortunately the Sunday game only and RT only seem to get bad press at the minute, and they just have a habit of doing very, very silly things and very, very stupid things, and this is just another one of them. Like it just, if you don't have enough time to show them, we'd appreciate a bit of honesty. They could have just said, you know what, we didn't plan to show them. I don't know. It probably wouldn't have went down well either. They could have just said nothing and skipped over it. It would have been bad as well, but I don't think it would be as bad as this. So yeah, it's just crazy comments, to be honest.
It is, to be fair. Yeah, like when I heard it, I was like, wow. Like it's a moment. Like, why did she? I respect Joannne Cantwell. I actually think she gets a lot of flack. In fairness, like there's other RT presenters that are actually as bad as Joannne, to be honest with you. But the fact she just said that, I mean, it's ridiculous when you look at Corrigan Park, at Derby, UL, for example. The game got, I think Limerick and Louth last year got moved to UL at the last minute. Even Dark, Tyrone and Kerry got moved at the last minute. I think there's another example. It went to the Connacht Centre of Excellence between London and Leitrim. Like, why would you make that comment? It's honestly ridiculous, and hopefully RT will learn from that. Honestly, as you said, and hopefully they'll move on from that. And we'll discuss the other Division 2 games. Cork against Derry, Parky Keefe at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Obviously, nothing riding on it. Derry already in the league final. Cork to finish as high as they can just to avoid the Sam Maguire just in case, because my worry would be, even thinking about it in recent days, is because you look at the Ulster draw, Armagh are playing against Cavan and Down are playing against Donegal. Like, Down and Cavan could really reach an Ulster final, and that could have major implications on further down Division 2. So in that sense, do you think it's a big game for the likes of NB to Kildare also live at, also on at 2 o'clock in Newbridge? Is it a big game for those three counties to see how far they can finish as high as they can, really?
Yeah, I think it is definitely. I think you wanna be in the Sam Maguire. You want to be in those group stages. I know the Tailteann Cup it got a lot of TV coverage last year and everything else, and It's making a lot of progress. I'm sure a lot of people will watch it again this year. But I think you want to finish as high as you can. You don't want to fall into that kind of territory just in case your big players step away, and it's a lack of progress, especially from the history of those counties. Kildare, Meath, Cork, all counties 10-15 years ago, all competing for not winning All Irelands and not winning provincial championships every year, but competing for them. And Kildare and Meath are two counties with huge histories, and in particular Meath and Cork, who Meath are one of the most successful All Ireland teams ever in terms of All Ireland wins. So yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's huge for those counties to win. I think it's massive as well, just to build confidence. Meath haven't won in their last 4 matches. For Cork, if they were to lose this, then all of a sudden you're looking at it and thinking they've won 3 and lost 4. Is that progress? I don't know. Like, I think they've had some good moments, but when you look at the teams they've actually beat, they're all teams below them. And I know they hammered Limerick, they hammered Kildare, and they were fairly comfortable against Clare as well. But at the same time, you would look at it and, is there a huge amount of progress there? There is probably a little bit, but it's hard to know at the same time. And I think as well, if Kildare can get a win against Meath, then all of a sudden they're in a bit more better shape going into the Leinster Championship a little bit. Although they're likely to play Dublin in a Leinster semi-final. And for me, like, they need to get a win going into that Leinster Championship, because it's likely they could play Louth in a Leinster semi-final. And they need a bit of momentum, So it's important as well, I think, to build a bit of confidence, because this is the last game that these counties are going to play before the provincial championships. And not only is it important to wrap up a Sam Maguire place, but I think it's important as well just to, you want to end the league on a high. And, if Kildare can win and beat Meath, and end up finishing 5th or 4th or whatever, all of a sudden you look back at it and think, okay, there was a lot of bad things about this league, but they ended on a high, and I think that's what fans will remember at the end of the day.
Exactly. So yeah, and Walbron Cork as well, 2 of their Munster rivals in the last game, and 2 of them are relegated already in Clare against Limerick on Ennis at 2 p.m. Not so much about a game prediction, but 2 questions of exterior things. Number 1, Clare and Limerick, do you think they deserve to get relegated? And number 2, do you think they have the capabilities of beating Cork and Munster, either of these 2?
Probably not, to be honest. I think Limerick are, I think they probably overachieved slightly by getting to Division 2. I think it shows the work that Billy Lee did. I mean, they were a Division 4 team a couple of years ago. And although we've seen, Louth and Limerick were on a similar trajectory for a couple of years, and Louth have continued on, and Limerick have, unfortunately fallen off. I think Limerick have had injuries as well, like Josh Ryan. That was a big injury at the start of this year. Danny Neville, still not coming back to the squad. And obviously the whole situation with Ray Dempsey as well. Clearly the players weren't a big fan of him, and from what I heard of people who were at the Limerick Kildare game, Limerick probably could have beat Kildare. There was only 3 points going into the home stretch. So look, I think Limerick, for them, it's about regrouping. I think the Tailteann Cup is a competition that suits them. I think the same for Clare as well. You think, even from a Limerick perspective, like, imagine Limerick are in a Tailteann Cup final, and then a week later the Limerick hurlers are playing in an All Ireland final. Like, that's great exposure. If it's on the same weekend or whatever, like that's great exposure for Limerick, I think. So I think, like, it's for Clare, like, I was saying to you, like, I don't think it's the end of an era. I think they're one of the favourites for Division 3 next year. I think there's a couple of games this year they should have won, and they didn't quite get over the line. I think Sigerson Cup suggests that there's still young players coming through, and they're still in a good nick. I don't think they'll lose too many players next year. And I think Colm Collins might even stick around. So, like, I don't think it's the end of the world for either county, to be honest. And I think Limerick definitely deserve to get relegated. Clare were a little bit unlucky. You'd look at Kildare as actually probably they've performed a lot worse than Clare. But I suppose, head to head is what matters, and in the end it goes down to that Kildare win in Ennis.
Yep, it does. And both of them going out to Division 3, and it remains to be seen how they'll do against Cork in the Munster Championship. Obviously, all three sides in the same side, the draw, and Kerry on the side with Waterford and Tipperary. And moving on to Division 3, 2 games to decide promotion here. Offaly against Down and Cavan against Fermanagh, both on at 2 o'clock in Tullamore and Breffley Park, respectively. the situation here is Fermanagh have to lose for anything to change, really. So if it's a draw, then Cavan and Fermanagh both go up in that Cavan and Fermanagh game, of course. If Fermanagh win, it's Cavan and Fermanagh still. But if Cavan win, then Offaly have the chance to go up if they beat Down. So could anything change, Aaron, do you think? Do you think Offaly have a chance of real chance of going up and replacing Fermanagh, or do you think Fermanagh will hang on?
Yeah, like I think what Cavan last week, obviously with the fact that they promotion wrapped up, I think the Ulster Championship is so intense. There's a lot of tough games, and obviously Cavan are, I think, fixed to play for Fermanagh, I think, in the championship in a couple of weeks, from what I remember as well. So there's two sides that are going to play each other probably further down the line. So I'm sure Cavan won't want to give too much away. So that's why I think I'd fancy Fermanagh, to be honest. I think Fermanagh have been, outstanding this year. 5 wins from 6 games. They've been absolutely brilliant. They've been a breath of fresh air, and a lot of people expected them to be in and around the relegation zone. But Sean Quigley is the man that everyone thinks of. But you look at Ultan Kelm, I think he's really stood up. Darren McGurn's been very good as well. Ryan Jones as well. So I think Fermanagh have gone very strong. I've done very well, and I think from a Cavan perspective, they rotated quite a lot against Antrim last week. I suspect they'll probably do similar again. So I fancy Fermanagh to get the win.
Yeah, I'd probably fancy Fermanagh as well to get a draw or a win, probably a draw at least. So that probably just writes off Offaly against Down. For the record, I think Offaly will win that game, but obviously Fermanagh will be up all the same. And just to point out, Fermanagh and Cavan, they're not on the same side of the draw. I'm looking at it here. It's Armagh or Antrim against Cavan, and the winners of that played Down or Donegal. So that's side of the draw. Fermanagh played Derry, so that's going to be, as you mentioned there, the old sort of rough and tumble of the championship in general. And before we go away from Division 2, Tipperary and Longford are relegated. Tipperary are going to Westmeath this weekend. Antrim are going to Longford, but Longford and Tipperary are relegated. Deserved?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, at the end of the day, if you've 1 point after 6 games, you can't have any complaints. There probably would have been an element of luck. The fact they were going into the final game with safety still in their own hands. And yeah, they did Longford peak during pre-season. I think that's how it looks, and I think we all expected high hopes for Paddy Christie. They had a couple of tough games at the start. They were playing for Fermanagh away from home, and then Westmeath and Cavan, and they just never quite were able to stem the flow. And there's good players in there like Rian Brady and Mickey Quinn and everything else, and probably haven't seen enough of Longford and the Sunday game and everything else to know why the performances have dropped. And Paddy Christie, I'm sure, is going to be there next year. He'll be in there for the long run, but it is a major setback. And I think all in all, when you look at Antrim, even taking away the 31-point defeat to Westmeath, which was just sort of one of those bizarre scorelines that you see every now and again in Gaelic football. Other than that performance, they've been very consistent a lot of the time, even when they've got beat. They probably should have beat Down. They're very unlucky that day. They've been very consistent. And fair play to Andy McEntee. It was an appointment that I didn't really understand. I didn't think he'd know too much about Antrim club football or be able to get the best out of the players. There hasn't been much underage the last couple of years. There's been retirements. I just thought relegation was writing on the wall. But fair play, 4 points, and I expect them to beat Longford as well, and to have 6 points, 3 wins, I think it is, after 7 games. That's good going from an Antrim perspective, and fair play to them.
Yeah, definitely fair play to them. No, I didn't expect Antrim to stay up whatsoever as well. And yeah, fair play to them. 2 years in Division 2 now. It's going to be a third, so fair play to Antrim. And Division 4, last but certainly not least, because this is an incredible division. One game, Wexford against Carlow, 5:30 on Saturday. We're obviously not going to discuss that because it has no relevance. Wexford obviously have a small chance of going up, but very, very slim. So obviously for them reasons, we won't discuss it. The main game in Division 4 is they're all at 1 o'clock. Leitrim against Sligo was the main one in Park Sean McDermott. Disappointed this game isn't shown, but this game, whoever's going to this game is going to be treated to a cracker because if Sligo win this, they're guaranteed promotion. But if Leitrim win it, it definitely puts it in the balance. And the other 2 games, as a matter of interest, are Waterford against Wicklow and London against Laois. So you have to expect Laois and Wicklow to win those games. So it's really a must-win for Leitrim in this.
Yeah, it definitely is. You know, it's a massive game from a Leitrim perspective. I mean, for both sides, and the fact that these two, likely to play each other as well in the Connacht semi-final, you could see a scenario where they actually end up playing each other in a league final as well. So this could be the first of a couple of games between these two counties. Now, when you actually look at the league table, like Sligo are on a plus 26 points difference, Laois are on a plus 24. I think we'd imagine Laois would beat London by more than 2 points, and obviously if Sligo were to get beat, that means the points difference goes down. So I think, even if Leitrim beat Sligo and Laois beat London, then that takes Sligo out of the equation on points difference, because all three teams will be on 10 points. So it's a knockout game for both sides. And Leitrim have been, I think last week was a big win, because when you actually looked at who they were beating in the opening couple of weeks, they were beating Waterford, London, Carlow, but they were losing to the likes of Wicklow and everything else. There was some disappointing results in there from a Leitrim perspective. And I think, getting that result against Laois was absolutely huge. And Keith Byrne has been phenomenal. Tom Pryor has been very good. And Leitrim have, Andy Moran's definitely building something there. And, there's a good bit of positivity around Leitrim amongst their supporters. I think Sligo have had a good bit of underage success the last couple of years as well, so you'd expect them to build on. It's a very tough one to call, and I might even go for a draw, to be honest.
Jeez, interesting. So you're predicting Sligo and Laois to go up?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's harsh on Leitrim, but I think when you actually look at Leitrim's like head to head against the big sides this season, like they beat Laois, they lost to Wexford. They lost to Wicklow as well. So like the record against the sort of other sides in the promotion zone hasn't been that good, and that's why I think Sligo they're just that bit better. And Sligo have been on a great run as well, five wins in a row as well since the opening day, since that defeat in the opening week. And I think this has been coming for Sligo. Like they've been building towards this. They were most people's favourites at the start of the year for Division 4, and I think they'll be bang up for it. And I think they'll do enough to get a draw. I think it'll be a very close game. There'll be a bit of drama here. There'll definitely be a bit of drama. And again, it's a huge shame this is not on TV, not on GA Go, because I would have loved to watch it.
Yeah, definitely. So it would have been a great appetizer for the Division 1 games, definitely. And we will never know why it isn't shown live even on GA Go, and they should have done it throughout the league campaign. So yeah, thanks Aaron for coming on to the podcast. Very interesting weekend to look forward to in the Allianz Football League and the Hurling League, of course, the semi-finals and that. And check out the other episode if you want to see a preview on that. So thanks Aaron for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Cheers, Matthew.